I had just turned 19 and convinced my best friend, Mark, to join me on a cross-country road trip. It was late June, and the heat was relentless, so we preferred driving at night. One evening, we found ourselves on a long stretch of deserted highway somewhere in the Midwest, the sky pitch black except for a sliver of moonlight. It must have been around 2 a.m. when I spotted someone walking along the shoulder, their thumb out. I remember turning to Mark and asking, "Should we pull over?" He hesitated, but we both felt a strange mix of guilt and curiosity. Who hitchhikes in the middle of nowhere at this hour? We slowed down, and that's when I got my first good look at the hitchhiker. He wore tattered jeans and a hoodie despite the heat. As our headlights lit him up, I noticed his face was pale, almost sickly. My gut twisted in a way I couldn't explain. Still, we stopped. The hitchhiker approached, and I rolled down my window just enough to talk. "Where are you headed?" I asked. He gave a vague answer, something about needing to get further east. His voice was monotone, barely a whisper. Mark and I exchanged a quick glance, an unspoken agreement passed between us that this felt wrong. "Sorry, man," I said, feigning regret. "We're only going a short distance." The hitchhiker stared at me, unblinking. Then he leaned closer. His breath against the window made my skin crawl. He didn't say a word. He just smiled. That grin was all gums and crooked teeth, like he was mocking us. It was enough to make my heart thunder in my chest. I hit the gas, and we sped off without another look. But a few miles down the road, my heart was still racing, and I kept checking the rearview mirror. Suddenly, I saw headlights behind us, far in the distance but growing closer. Mark and I kept our eyes on it, half convinced it was just another late-night driver. Except it was gaining on us fast. We merged onto a smaller road, wanting to lose whoever was behind us. The car followed, matching our turns, speeding whenever we did. I started to panic. "It can't be him," Mark muttered. He was on foot. Finally, we veered off onto a dirt road leading to an old rest stop. The car's headlights cut out, then vanished. We sat there trembling, adrenaline pumping. It was the longest 5 minutes of my life, waiting to see if the car would appear again. It never did. When we finally got back on the highway, the road was empty. No sign of the hitchhiker, no sign of those headlights. We told ourselves it was just a coincidence, maybe some other driver messing with us. But deep down, we both knew something was off. The next morning, we shared the story with a gas station attendant. He just shook his head. "People around here talk about a hitchhiker who shows up on that road," he said in a hushed voice. "They say if you pick him up, you never make it to your destination." To this day, I still dream about that smile, and I wonder what would have happened if we'd let him in. The summer I graduated from college, I set out alone on a trip from my home state to the West Coast, hoping to find myself. I planned to car camp, stop at national parks, and soak in the scenery. One late afternoon, I found myself running low on gas and a barren stretch of highway, just a dusty road flanked by dry fields as far as the eye could see. I finally spotted a dilapidated sign for a gas station a mile ahead. By the time I pulled in, dusk was settling, painting the sky a reddish hue. The station looked abandoned, cracked windows, half the letters missing from the signage, weeds sprouting through the concrete. But there was a single pump that appeared functional. I stepped out of the car and an unsettling silence hit me. No chirping birds, no cars passing by, not even a breeze. My footsteps echoed unnaturally as I approached the pump. The old credit card reader wouldn't work, so I decided to venture inside to see if anyone was there. The interior was dimly lit by a single flickering fluorescent light. Shelves were mostly empty, dusty soda cans and a few candy bars scattered about. "Hello?" I called out, voice trembling slightly. It smelled like moldy paper and stale air. Then, from behind the counter, I heard a shuffling sound, like someone dragging their feet. I walked closer, heart thudding against my ribs. A figure lurched into view. It was an older man with sunken eyes and dirty clothes. He stared at me, unblinking. "Need gas?" he rasped. I nodded, relieved to see a person, yet something about him made my skin crawl. He moved like every step pained him, sliding behind the ancient register. I handed him some cash and waited in silence as he turned on the pump from behind the counter. While he fiddled with the switch, I felt another presence behind me. I spun around, no one was there. Yet the hairs on the back of my neck prickled, and I could have sworn I heard a faint whisper, too quiet to decipher. Suddenly, the overhead light flickered off, plunging the store into near darkness. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing. Another shuffle of feet, then complete silence. My heart pounded in my ears. I fumbled for my phone's flashlight and swept it across the room, empty. The man was gone. "Sir?" I called again, stepping around the counter. There was nothing but a dusty stool and an open door leading to a back office, pitch black inside. Then I heard the gas pump kick on outside. It startled me so badly I almost dropped my phone. Instinct screamed at me to leave. I sprinted out, filled my tank as fast as I could, and jumped into my car. As I was about to peel out of there, I glanced in the rearview mirror. In the store's doorway stood the old man, eyes glinting in the dim light, watching me. And I swear something else limped behind him, tall and shadowy, with elongated limbs, arms gently wrapped around his shoulders like it was controlling him. My tires squealed as I sped away, adrenaline surging. When I finally found a motel later that evening, I tried reporting what I saw to the local sheriff's office. They said the old station had been out of business for years, and no one had lived on that property for at least a decade. No evidence of any occupant was ever found. Even now, that single moment, seeing that shape behind the old man, haunts me every time I stop for gas on a lonely road. During one of my summer breaks in college, I volunteered as a trail scout for a national park out west, guiding hikers and occasionally helping rescue lost travelers. After my stint ended, I decided to drive back home alone, taking scenic back roads and sleeping in my car under the stars. On the final leg of my trip, I passed through a secluded wooded area known for its winding roads and poor cell reception. The sun was just setting, long, thin shadows stretched across the pavement. I was mesmerized by the towering pines, the orange glow of dusk filtering through the branches. That was my mistake, being too enthralled by nature to notice the figure standing in the middle of the road until it was almost too late. I slammed the brakes, my car screeching to a halt mere feet away from a tall man. He didn't flinch or move, just stood there. My heart thudded in my chest as I rolled down the window a crack. "Are you all right?" I called. He nodded slowly, then pointed to his wrist as if checking for a watch. "Time," he whispered in a voice barely audible over my idling engine. "Time?" I repeated, confused. Without another word, he turned and walked into the trees on the side of the road. It happened so fast that I had no chance to react. Feeling a combination of worry and curiosity, I grabbed my flashlight and decided to follow him, if only to make sure he wasn't hurt. The woods were eerily silent, my footsteps muffled by layers of pine needles. I could hear my heartbeat drumming in my ears. Occasionally, I caught a glimpse of him, his silhouette moving between the tall trunks, always just out of reach of my light beam. Suddenly, I heard a soft humming, like a lullaby. I froze, scanning the darkness. Ahead, I saw him standing by a large pine, staring at something on the ground. He held an old, faded photograph in his hand. My flashlight flickered, and I could see his face contort with anguish. "Hello?" I ventured, stepping closer. He lifted his gaze to mine, his eyes brimming with tears. He whispered again, "Not enough time." Then, in a heartbeat, he bolted deeper into the woods. I chased after him, stumbling over roots and rocks. Eventually, I came to a small clearing. The man was gone, but there was a feeling of suffocating dread there, like I'd intruded on something I shouldn't have witnessed. I heard twigs snapping behind me, closer than before. My instinct screamed that I wasn't alone. I whipped my flashlight around, and in that brief arc of light, I saw a pale face lurking behind a tree, watching me with hollow eyes. I ran back to my car, legs shaking, adrenaline surging. My headlights revealed nothing but an empty road. As I sped away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed by car, on foot. I had no idea. When I finally reached a small motel outside the forest, I tried to rationalize it all. Maybe it was a lost hiker. Maybe my mind was playing tricks in the dim light. But then I remembered that photograph in his hand. What if it was a clue to something more sinister? I ended up showing the photo's description, as I recalled it, to local park rangers. They found no missing person matching that man's description, no reports of suspicious activity in that area. It was as if he vanished into thin air. To this day, I dread the idea of revisiting those woods, half expecting to see that man and his hollow-eyed watcher stepping out from behind the pines, waiting for me to return. Final thoughts. 3 road trips, 3 unnerving encounters that left each traveler shaken to their core. Maybe they stumbled upon urban legends in the making, or perhaps they came face to face with evils that lurk in forgotten corners of our highways and backroads. But one thing remains certain: each story ends with more questions than answers. Did a phantom hitchhiker almost lure 2 friends to their doom? Did an abandoned gas station serve as a home to something beyond comprehension? Did a lost soul in the woods harbor a dark secret that clings to him even now? We may never know. What we do know is that sometimes the most terrifying part of a journey is the unknown, lurking just beyond the glow of your headlights. If you're planning a summer road trip, be cautious. Watch your mirrors, pay attention to those deserted pit stops, and if you feel like you're not alone on that empty stretch of asphalt, you just might be right. Stay safe out there, and remember, the open road might offer freedom, but it can also lead you straight into the darkest night of your life. Thanks for listening to these chilling tales. If you've had your own unsettling experiences on the road, feel free to share in the comments. Until next time, keep your eyes on the road and don't pick up any strangers along the way.